Hello and welcome to the CBB SuperShow. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85, and we're continuing our off-season coverage of the transfer portal, college basketball. Yes, it's May. John Rothstein says we sleep in May. He's not really sleeping. You see, he's still posting news. He's still doing his thing. And you know what? We're still going to be doing our thing as well, which means wall-to-wall coverage each and every Wednesday night. We're covering all the updates to the portal, the relevant stuff that you care about or will want to care about when it comes to DFS, prop betting, and the like. A lot of craziness has happened. Also in college football, the portal window has closed or was about to close. We're going to be doing a lot of college football coverage here as we get into June and the calendar changes. So be ready for that. It's a summer of college football previews and everything else. We're also going to be talking about TBT a lot when that starts. So there's going to be lots of opportunities here for us to still make money while we're internalizing and studying all this college football and college basketball madness. The transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh. Some teams have really won out and some have struggled. One team that has kind of, done their thing, and this is going to be a mid-major show, really. I mentioned last week, we're going to be talking about mid-majors, but I want to talk about real quick the Connecticut Huskies, because we were at this time last year and people continue to say, well, there's no way they'll repeat. They lost their top three guys. Like, this is disaster. What are they going to do? We're in the same situation this year. Donovan Klingen's going pro. Stephen Castle. We know they've had one transfer, the little used role player, Apostas Romoglu. Tristan Newton is gone. He is out of eligibility. Cam Spencer out of eligibility. Right now, we're waiting on Alex Caravan, who did declare for the NBA draft, maintaining his eligibility. It'd be nice for them to get him back. But if not, look at this Connecticut roster, and you're going to have people telling you this roster's not top 20. It's not top 10. It's certainly not top 5. And maybe we're giving Dan Hurley a little bit too much credit. I tell you right now, I'm not going to be doubting Connecticut anytime soon. I have really been adamant about their championship window staying open for the next 2 to 4 years with ease. I don't know if they'll three-peat, but I know they'll be in the mix. And I do know that they're going to be an Elite Eight team regardless, because Coach Hurley and his assistants are some of the best in the business. Now, whether Caravan comes back or not, obviously getting Caravan back, that will sail them into like top 3 status here. As it stands right now without Caravan, they're probably like a 6, 7. They're in the top 10. And some people say you're crazy. I am crazy for that and others. But look at what's coming back. Hassan Diarra has decided to return for his 5th and final season in collegiate basketball. We know he's a super sub, one of the most important pieces off the bench to them this past season. He has been a part of 2 titles now, going for a 3rd. He'll probably play a little bit more. He was a 20-minute guy off the bench. He'll probably get somewhere between 22 to 25 minutes. I think it may make sense to keep him coming off the bench, but we'll see. We're not here to talk about that. We're just here to talk about him being back. Stolo Ball, part of that freshman group from last year. My man, Jalen Stewart, who I love. You guys know that. Jaden Ross and Yusuf Singare, they were a part of that, Fab Five, as they called it. Everything that's a 5-man freshman class is always going to be called that, dating back to the Michigan days. Obviously, Castle was part of that class too, and he's going pro. Those other 4 freshmen, they weren't used as much. But Solo Ball and Jalen Stewart, I'm expecting big things from both of them, especially Jalen Stewart. If I haven't harped on it enough, I'm going to harp on it some more. During the tournament, in press conferences, Coach Hurley said, hey, Jalen Stewart really is a special player. We really are going to have him as a big-time piece of the team next year. The transfer portal, we don't want him to leave. Like, he was adamant, as they're winning games, how important Jalen Stewart is. Because, he's only playing 5 or 6 minutes in the tournament, but he's going to be a big-time star next year. So it's very important for him to kind of buy in and get his group that's coming back to buy in as well. Samson Johnson, he'll be taking over the 5, most likely. And then, of course, we have the freshman coming in, Ahmad Noel. He's a 4-star. They also have Isaiah Abraham. He's another 4-star. Noel probably splitting those minutes with, I'd say, Hassan Diarra to a degree, maybe Aiden Mahaney. That gets us into who they've brought in. Aiden Mahaney, the St. Mary's transfer, who a lot of us, myself included, thought would be a big breakout star for St. Mary's. He didn't win WCC Player of the Year, and he kind of had a down year. The first couple of games of the season, he looked like that guy, but Marshall Lunas ends up overshadowing him. Alex Dukas has a nice season, and all of a sudden, Mahaney's just kind of a mediocre season from what our expectations were. 14 points a game, still solid. Shot about 35% from long range, still solid. This is the kid that we think can shoot over 40% from long range and score maybe 18 points per game. But he's going to have a chance to really compete and be very well developed here in the UConn system. They also bring in Terrace Reed, who was a backup big 2 years ago for Michigan. Then, got some starter minutes, averaged about 9 and 7 last year. They'll probably be like a two-headed monster there, maybe with a little bit of Singare, but between Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed splitting those 5 minutes, the big difference here for UConn coming into this season as opposed to last season, they don't have a Donovan Clingan waiting, playing behind Adema Sanogo. They don't have Tristan Newton. So there's a valid argument of, hey, that even though last year they lost their 3 most important pieces in Jordan Hawkins, Adema Sanogo, and Andre Jackson, they had a lot of upper tier talent that was coming back. They've got a lot of their guys coming back besides Samson Johnson and Hassan Diarra are mostly untested, but you have to remember a lot of them are 5 stars from last year, 4 stars from last year. This is a talented group. They also went out and got Liam McNeely, who was the 5-star top 15 prospect decommitted from Indiana. It was an arms race to get him. He decides to go to UConn. He is a sniper. He will fit in extremely well. I don't know how the starting lineup's going to shake out. If Caravan does not return, I do believe we will see a lot of Jalen Stewart. If Caravan does return, the starting lineup gets a little dicey for me. I think Diarra does come off the bench, and there'll be some decisions here. But in Hurley, we have to trust, right? But I just wanted to harp that this UConn team isn't going anywhere anytime soon. You look on Twitter, you look on social media, people are railing against the way too early top 25 rankings that all these people do. And a lot are saying that this UConn roster has no business being in the top 25. But you give this roster to Dan Hurley, please tell me again how this team is not an Elite 8 squad. They certainly are, even without Caravan. So had to really harp on that. All right, so this is the mid-major show. I like to do at least one of these per off season, and really it's relevant because I'm kind of a connoisseur of low to mid-major hoops, but I like to argue or enlighten people who say the transfer portal is ruining college basketball, and maybe in its current iteration with the the pay for play stuff that's going on, it's not necessarily ruining it. It's not going to end college basketball because we're told, overtime elite, that's going to end college basketball. What happened? Overtime elite. Where's it at? G League Ignite. Oh, that's going to end college basketball. They're going to take all the best prospects. Where's G League Ignite now? That's right. Defunct. Nothing's going to end college basketball. Your mom and dad's college basketball that we know and love, and guys coming back and playing on a roster for 4 years, that might be dead. But how is that any different really from the one and done era that we just went through a decade ago, where, hey, guys are coming in, they're playing 1 year and they're going. So you're still having a lot of turnover on those rosters. It's really no different. And I know that some people really hate this. I enjoy it. I like roster movements. Some rosters are being gutted. There's coaching changes. Like, that's just going to happen. And if we get to a point where we have to introduce contracts and this becomes a semi-professional thing, it's really not that bad of a thing. I know that there's a lot of purists out there that want to maintain this facade of college athletics is still pure and getting an education should be good enough. But kids have been being paid for decades upon decades upon decades upon decades. Bagman, you guys know, you probably smart enough. If you're watching a show at 10 o'clock at night about the transfer portal and college basketball, you're probably a pretty smart person. and you're really well versed with how college athletics work. So with that being said, you know that players have been getting paid for a long time. This is something we had to get to legally. This isn't quite what I had in mind with true pay for play. These collectives are I don't know, man. There's some stuff going on here with these collectives that I'm not a big fan of. But I think that once the COVID year drops off after this upcoming season and we get to a place where there's some continuity, there's some changes, there's like we're feeling this out. I think we'll get to a point where the transfer portal, there'll still be a fair amount. Please believe that. But I don't know that we get to this 1,800, 2,000 crazy number of transfers after the COVID year falls off. There's just a lot of extra players because of that extra year. And we're even seeing it. St. John's, Chris Ledlam and Jordan Dingle both came from Ivy League schools. They did not play. The Ivy League decided during the COVID, year when teams, shut it down early and then decided if they were going to play or not. The very next season, the Ivy League decided to can it and not play. So because of that, Ivy League players during that time lost a year. So even though Ledlam and Dingle are technically out of collegiate eligibility, they're arguing and they have filed a lawsuit against the NCAA to grant them an extra year. So you're getting now 6-7 year players. Seth Towns just announced today that he will no longer be playing. He was at Howard this last year. He would have been his 9th year of eligibility. He had a year of eligibility entitled to him because of injuries and other stuff going on. A lot of trolls on Twitter today. Oh, he's retiring from college. This guy was in college when my dad was. Like, it's funny. But I mean, he went through a lot. And yes, it sounds crazy. 9 years of college, like what? But this can happen. You have red shirt years, you have medical, red shirts, you have all this stuff happening. And then you add on the COVID year on top of all that, and you get 5, 6, 7 year players. There are a lot of them. So the transfer portal's ballooned. I think a lot of people don't realize that in the next 2 to 3 years, we're probably going to see a big downturn in the number of transfers that we see. And I also think that another year of this kind of, hey, you want to get in the door of this kid, you want to, get a chance to sign him in the portal. We're talking $800,000. And then we're looking at a stat of 8 points, 2 rebounds. Like there's coaches that are already saying what? There's coaches that are leaving the game. There's coaches that are saying, no, we're not doing this. So I think that overall something's going to happen where contracts are going to have to happen, or, we're going to have to get rid of this whole, like, we must maintain the amateurism of college sports, mainly college football and college basketball. It hasn't really been amateurism for a very long time. We've pretended it is, but now that we're able to see people get paid in the front, not in the back, a lot of people are having some trouble with that. So it's crazy right now. I know that this is harmful for some of you, but it is a fun time also. The edge we'll have DFS and betting wise is that it's going to take a lot of time the first month. The first month of the season, we usually rake anyways, but it's going to take time for people to figure out, hey, this is a 75% new roster, or in the case of Arkansas, 100% new roster. How do these pieces fit together? Who's going to be the alpha? What's the pecking order? We're going to spend all summer studying that stuff. We're going to be able to go back and look at some of these shows on demand, and we'll have time stamps and labels and everything. So you can go back and be like, you know what? I know everything I need to know about the upcoming season with the A10, the MAC. This guy that I'm playing head-to-heads with, he has no idea. Here's a sneak play. Oh, this guy coming off the bench. Here's a NAIA superstar, Riley Minix. There's going to be a lot of information that we get out to you. Also, a few updates with my other stuff that I'm working on. My man Carl Daughtery Jr., the guy who transferred from Central Arkansas, been doing some stuff with him. He had a visit to Northwestern State. I'm really excited about it. It was a real good visit. I was hoping he would get the pictures and the jerseys that the transfers sometimes do, but that didn't happen. He also has a call with St. Peter's. And Missouri State was also reaching out. So lots of fun stuff there for Carl Daughtery Jr. Also reached out to Dior Johnson. If you remember Dior Johnson, Originally, well, there's a bunch of stuff that happened, but he was going to be at Oregon. Then he was going to be at Pittsburgh. Some stuff happened. He wasn't able to play for either of those programs. Ends up at the JUCO level where he tears it up. He's back in the transfer portal, looking to get back into D1. Hopefully we can do something with him. We were originally going to have him on a show 2 years ago, but because of the stuff that happened there at Oregon, he had to drop out. So did circle back around to see if that would be something he'd be interested in doing. And also a few other coaches that we have reached out to do some collaboration. So there's going to be some pretty fun stuff here going on. And still the YouTube, TikTok, and IG shorts, we're still going to be pumping those out as well. You guys have supported those a lot. I do appreciate it. Before we delve into the mid-major section here, and it's robust, please help me out, help the FTN network out. You saw we got a new logo. We're doing things. We got a new website, but we're trying to build our community. We're trying to build our presence here when it comes to YouTube, Twitter, socials, everything. Helping me out tremendously by subscribing to the channel if you haven't already and hitting that like button. I know it's lame to beg for likes, but I got to tell you, it really helps. When you guys watch, it helps. When you guys share, it really helps. When you guys drop likes, comments, anything at all that you can do to help support the show in that way, and you don't have to give any money. It's free. It takes no extra time, but you have no idea how much that helps us because it puts us into the algorithm. It starts lifting us up the rankings. And when people search for things as minuscule as mid-majors, A10, any of these tags that we've dropped, our show will pop up when people are looking for those things. So that's the goal. That's what we're doing. That is how we are managing. We have a playback TV as well. Right now, the NBA guys have been smashing it there from FTN, watching games live with the community. That's going to be something that we utilize during college football Saturdays and, of course, college basketball as well. I couldn't be any happier about that. I've been wanting a playback TV account for quite some time. Really happy FTN has that. We've got a ton of things planned for this upcoming season. All right, let's get into the mid-majors. Let's talk about it because here's my thing that I always tell people. Yes, the transfer portal is tough for low to mid-major teams. Obviously, when they have a guy break out, these high majors are going to come swooping. They're going to come knocking. The fact of the matter is, though, that low to mid-majors are not going to be dead. Some are, but some are always dead. Whether the transfer portal was like this or not, there's some programs that just aren't able to recruit that well, not able to grab players. Arguably, the transfer portal being so robust now actually helps those programs that maybe weren't ever relevant because now they're able to offer a few things. Playing time, which is going to be huge. P5 castoffs. I use that term a lot in our Discord, when I'm talking to people. What I mean by that is the following. You have the guys going up to the high majors that are, had a breakout year. Maybe they averaged 20 points at Ball State. Now that, now they've got offers to go play for Michigan and Creighton and UConn and any school that they want. P5 castoffs are the ones that maybe couldn't get minutes at Vanderbilt. Maybe they, the just didn't work out. It wasn't a fit at Northwestern. I'm just throwing random schools out here. Now those schools who weren't getting players, highly rated recruits and weren't really getting transfers from those high majors because what were those guys on the bench, those role players who didn't have a role, who weren't playing minutes, what did they normally do? They stayed at that school and they played until they could get more time, more minutes, more production, development. And yes, that's a great time. That's a great thing. We still want to see that in college basketball, but it's less likely to happen. And those guys are going to be getting, instead of just getting recruited over and eventually pushed out anyways, because that happened a lot. A guy wants to stay in the program, but maybe he doesn't have a future there. The coach is recommending to him to transfer out or, lose a scholarship, whatever. We don't think about that. We only think, the players are being greedy, but we don't think about the administration, the coaches, the, ADs, all this stuff coming into play. Now those players have somewhere to go. Maybe somebody was on a Maryland team. Maybe they played 3 minutes a game. Now they can transfer down. Maybe they go to Lipscomb. Again, I'm just throwing schools out there. They go to Lipscomb. They go right into a starting role. that Lipscomb's able to market, like, we've got this Maryland transfer, former 4-star, rated number 60 in the ESPN top 150, whatever. Plays 30 minutes a game, averages 15 and 5, maybe a couple blocks. Suddenly, that player who was highly, rated out of high school, but bricked his freshman season, suddenly he's a hot commodity. He just had a really nice, fresh or second season, I should say, sophomore season at Lipscomb. And now he's able to hit the portal and work his way back up to the P5 level. So the way these low to mid majors can work it, they need to be mining the portal for guys who are not scoring a lot or not putting up huge production, showed some promise, but maybe they weren't getting that many minutes, looking for a new opportunity. Yes, Lipscomb cannot offer the money that Miami can. That's not a debate. I'm not here to say that they will. What they can offer is an opportunity to then get minutes, show off what you can do, develop, and then come back and make that kind of NIL money that you think you're entitled to. That is the way that these mid-majors can win. Now, there pre-super transfer NIL era, there were certain teams that did very well at this anyways. UCSB, the Gauchos from the Big West, they were very, very good at getting those P5 cast-offs, even without a quote-unquote bag. And a transfer portal a fraction of the size that it is now. Grand Canyon, Coach Drew, he's been able to pull these high major talents and these guys for years, nothing new. And you know what? Both of those programs are doing it just the same and doing it extremely well. They didn't need NIL. They didn't need the portal. They didn't need any of this to do it before. But now that they have a more expansive amount of players to choose from, they've done even better. And that is one of the teams we're going to talk about today is Grand Canyon. So when I say P5 castoffs, that is what I mean. And that is how these teams can win. So it's not all bad. And some of these teams are going to be in the tournament. I guarantee it. And we're going to have some future betting opportunities on them as well. We're going to start with the Big South with High Point. Somebody was talking some trash about the High Point boys here on Twitter before I got on air. The Cayman Islands tournament, which has High Point, Rutgers is tentatively scheduled to be in that preseason tournament. They probably won't. They're trying to get into a more prestigious one. But what was said was, Rutgers is going to be a top 25 team, one of their best teams possibly ever. And they shouldn't be playing High Point. And I want to just kind of pump the brakes here and let's not trash talk High Point, because High Point has some dudes. And they had a really nice finish to the season, playing a third tier tournament, I know, but they were fun to watch. We had some DFS action with them. They are losing a few players. Duke Miles has transferred out. Believe he went to Auburn. They have like 4 to 5 of their rotational players out. But as it stands right now, Kezagefa, who averaged about 16 points per game, he should be back. Kamani Hamilton, I have not seen him transfer. He was a 15-7 guy. Bodo, who is a budding star in the paint. I'm shocked that he hasn't portaled. I thought for sure some teams were going to come grab him. And then they went out and they got some really strong prospects from the transfer portal themselves, and also some guys who are upperclassmen now. ECU transfer Bobby Pettiford, who originally started at Kansas, highly rated recruit, just didn't work out. At ECU, he had his moments, a little turnover prone. He only shot 26.4% from long range, averaged about 8 points, 4 assists. Now you drop him in the Big South on a team like High Point, where he's going to get the opportunity to play 35 minutes a game. Bobby Pettiford is going to thrive here under Coach Huss, the High Point head coach. Really looking forward to that. They also get Florida Gulf Coast transfer Chase Johnson, who was a 10-point per game scorer, about a 30% three-point shooter. Another guy to fill a role that's going to play well. And then the Jeremy Fumenya kid. You may remember me talking about him on one of the first slates of the season last year for Rhode Island. He's a Rhode Island transfer. Jeremy has ridiculous upside. He has what I believe, limitless upside in a conference like the Big South, which has had a history of taking P5 castoffs. Drew Pember at Asheville, right? There's been many others. DJ Burns, who's a superstar and everybody knows him from NC State. He started at Tennessee, didn't play much, went to Winthrop, Big South, starred, goes to NC State. Now he's a mega star. He's gonna, sure, he's got all kinds of endorsement deals he can get down with. Anyways, Jeremy Fumena, he was a freshman this season for Rhode Island. He dealt with injuries throughout, but he had massive upside. His rebounding rates were off the charts for his minutes. Nearly 30% combined rate there, a 4% block rate. He shot about 34% from long range as a near 7-footer. That's on 24 attempts. Love that. Had a shot rate of 23% and a usage rate of 22%. And this is playing for 8, 12, 15 minutes at a time. Early in the season, I believe it was the Northwestern game. That was the slate they were on. I liked them a lot going into that one. They were in a preseason tournament. He played 19 minutes. He did not work out, unfortunately, but he had some really big games before that against Fairfield and Wagner, 16-7 against Wagner in 24 minutes, 14-6 against Fairfield in 16 minutes. His usage rate in those games was 33 and 42%. Didn't get going there, but tons of games where he played just 8 to 10 minutes and usage rate over 20%. Now you're dropping him into the Big South where he's going to be able to play 25 plus minutes with regularity, assuming he doesn't foul or have, any more injuries. He did have a semi-high foul rate at 4.1 per 40. But you're talking about a guy who's going into a great situation here for High Point, especially if Kamani Hamilton is gone. And like I said, I'm not really sure what's going on with Bodo there, but they have a really nice nucleus that they can build off with some returners. High Point, please respect High Point. I beg of you to respect High Point. Also in the Big South, Longwood. This is another team. Now, Longwood, I had mentioned Grand Canyon and UCSB. Longwood is a team pre-NIL transfer portal era that had no trouble mining the portal for P5 castoffs and guys that made them competitive. And Longwood has done a very nice job. They've been a perennial, contender in the Big South. They've been in the tournament several times the last few seasons. They are going to have to rebuild their roster a little bit. Wallen Napper has no more eligibility as their number one guy, 15-4-4. Michael Christmas, he has no more eligibility, 11-6 guys. So those are some big pieces they're losing. They're also losing their third, fourth, and fifth scorer as well. So Longwood has some work to do. The nice thing is because they're used to mining the portal so well, they've had no issue doing so. They've already brought in 4 different transfers to replace everyone that they've lost. One being Kyrell Luke, a St. Bonaventure transfer. Mixed results. Kyrell is a very talented player. St. Bonaventure wasn't a good fit for him. DJ Jefferson heading to Longwood from Tennessee. Stop me if you've heard this before. A Tennessee player going from the SEC to the Big South. Drew Pember at Asheville, DJ Burns at Winthrop, now possibly DJ Jefferson at Longwood. And DJ Jefferson stepping into a situation where this is exactly the type of player I'm talking about. Fairly highly rated coming out of high school, gets very minimal opportunities with the Vols, shows some promise, but just no playing time available for him there. Obviously going to get recruited over. Vols are always looking in the portal. Now he goes to Longwood where he'll have an opportunity to beat the guy. And if he has the type of season that I think he can, we're talking about a possible Big South Player of the Year candidate, first teamer. What's going to happen next year? He's going to re-portal, right? And the P5 teams are going to come out of the woodwork to offer him. Case in point. Yeah, that might suck for Longwood. That might suck, because you're basically using him as a rental. And that's not a popular term to use when you're talking about college sports, but this is the way it is right now. And you either have to adapt to the way things are or get left behind. Longwood's not a team. The Lancers are not a team that's going to get left behind. So yes, they're going to give this opportunity to DJ Jefferson, and he may be gone after this season. But there'll be somebody else looking for an opportunity at the P5 level or coming out of the P5 level, and Longwood and Coach Griff Aldridge would be standing there with a starting spot, 35 minutes, per game, and all the shots that you want. Come on. They also bring in a Drake transfer and Kobe Garland and a D2 transfer named KJ McClurg, not Mac McClung. McClurg averaged 23 points per game at the D2 level. And before you scoff about D2, D3, NIAI, just remember on Morehead State this year, Riley Minix, who was a NAIA superstar, slid in flawlessly for that team and went absolutely just crazy. And in the tournament, he was completely unstoppable against the Illini. Yes, they lost, but he looked like he belonged. So do not scoff about anyone when we're talking about a 23 point per game scorer. Yes, from the D2 level, but that does not mean he can't integrate and play well for the Big South. Big South is a team or a conference we want to keep an eye on. But as far as futures go, High Point and Longwood, absolutely. Moving over to the WAC, where we have Grand Canyon. Coach Drew is a phenomenal human being, great coach, just like an easy guy to root for, and the Drew family in general. But Bryce has the legendary shot for Valparaiso, whenever you see buzzer beater videos and whatnot, like that shot's always shown. And he was always going to have that to kind of, be recognizable for. But he has done a great job with Grand Canyon this past year with Tyon Grant Foster, who's going pro. Like they have just done a great job bringing talent into their roster, into their program. Gabe McLaughlin, Sidney Curry, they did a nice job. Now they've lost some pieces, absolutely. But they should have Rayshawn Harrison, who did enter the portal initially, but has decided to come back. Harrison, without Grant Foster, should become a easy 20 point per game scorer. They do bring in Micaiah Williams, who's a UT Arlington transfer, 46% 3-point shooter. They need that. My man, Jacoby Coles, who I always love at TCU, 42% 3-point shooter, average about 10-4, high usage rate. Always, he had some starts, but usually came off the bench. He's going to be phenomenal in this program. If I don't think he'll turn into Tyon Grant Foster necessarily. Tyon averaged 20 and 6, but there's a big possibility that he does take that usage and make it his own. They also bring in Dennis Evans, the 7-footer who was at Louisville, a little used player there, but he's going to turn into a player that Drew can use a lot. They also have Locke Wurr coming back, who is a featured piece of their tournament team, and Colin Moore. So Grand Canyon is great. They're going to be back in the mix to win the WAC, and they are going to be a team that nobody would want to see in the tournament, with or without Tyon Grant Foster. Special note, Seattle U is also in the WAC. And I'm a big Huskies fan. I do pay attention to Seattle U, same city. They did bring in Georgia transfer Matthew Alexander Moncrief for his final collegiate season. The DFS community has always waited for Mam, as we affectionately call him, to break out. It hasn't really happened, but I do like the fact that he's going to be playing at Seattle U with some talent and a good coach in Chris Victor. So I will be paying attention to my man Matthew Alexander Moncrief going to Seattle U. All right, one more WAC team to talk about here, Stephen F. Austin. Now, they haven't made any super impactful production-wise, the two names I'm going to talk about, they're not going to knock your socks off initially, but the opportunity is going to be really good. And Stephen F. Austin still has multiple spots to fill, but they are going to be really good. And the WAC is going to be a competitive conference. This is going to be a one of those, you hear me talking about ESPN Plus and watching games on demand. The WAC and the Big West are two conferences I find myself watching quite a bit. They bring in Texas transfer and highly rated recruit Chris Johnson, who just, case in point, another one of those players, had no opportunity to play at Texas. There's too many guys ahead of him. in the olden days, as we would say, he would stay at Texas. He would develop another year and maybe end up starting. Maybe he gets recruited over. There's no way to really know. But with the era we're in now, he hits the transfer portal. He decides to go to Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin NIL, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what their NIL picture looks like. I'm guessing it's not very much. What do they have to offer? Playing time, opportunity, and shots. Chris Johnson is going to be an absolute monster for Stephen F. Austin and in the WAC. The WAC has several guys who are going to be clawing their way back to the P5 level and are going to be looking to have huge seasons. Chris Johnson is one player to keep an eye on. They also bring in Keon Thompson from UMass. Keon Thompson spent some time at Oral Roberts as well. Played about 28 minutes for them, shot a way horrific percentage from long range, 23%, averaged about 10 points per game, 3 assists, and 4 rebounds. He is a productive player, even though that 3-point percentage number may scare you, and it scares me as well. He has never been a huge 3-point shot maker the last 2 seasons. But I think that the opportunity to play in a little bit of a, still a competitive conference, but obviously not a top one. Not that the A10 is top, but he's going to get the opportunity to really refine his shot. Very good passer. He's going to be able to run this offense. And he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And that's going to be a good opportunity for him to work his way through and maybe get a shot at a P5 team as well. But that combo of Keon Thompson and Chris Johnson, again, looking at their numbers, you're not going to be thinking much of it, but you have to think of there's this opportunity here for them to absolutely destroy. Both of those guys should be focal points to this team as it stands right now, and I expect them to get more. All right, moving on to the Metro, the MAC, not the MAC with the 1A, but the MAC with 2 A's. We're going to talk about Siena. There's several teams in the MAAC that are going through some big changes here, and roster-wise, Mary Mac, who's been such a dominant group in that conference, even they are having some players that they're having to replace. There's going to be some fairly rough teams in this conference, which is not great. We want it to be competitive, but there's one team in particular. Well, there's 2 that I want to talk about. One in particular that looks really good on paper, Siena. Niagara, who is coached by Greg Paulus of Duke fame. He's brought in a bunch of transfers, had to turn it over, but no real notable names there. A couple of D2 guys, UC Riverside, Nebraska, Omaha, transfers like that. Let's pull up here. This is the conference St. Peter's is in, by the way. Might see our man Carl Jr. playing for St. Peter's one day. We'll see. All right, Siena, who is coached by Jerry McNamara, Syracuse legend. Love this conference. Greg Paulus, Jerry McNamara. McNamara has his work cut out for him. Siena has a pretty decent tradition, at least the last decade, of being a competitive team with solid talent and good coaching. He has gone into the portal and pulled out some pretty solid names for their conference. Now, these are going to be names that you just probably don't even remember, or you don't think they're going to do much of anything. Peter Carey, near 7-foot center, played for Syracuse. You probably don't even remember him at Syracuse because he played 5 minutes per game. But he's going into a situation here for Siena where he's going to get what? Minutes and opportunity. Xavier transfer, Reed Duchamp. 1 minute per game. Probably don't even remember him, but he played at Xavier. He was good enough to get a scholarship to Xavier. Now he's going to play for Siena, where he's going to get a huge amount of minutes and an opportunity to play the 3-4 and have that all the shots he can handle, basically. They also bring in a Albany transfer by the name of Marcus Jackson and Hofstra transfer, formerly Butler transfer, Miles Wilmoth, another 6'10", stout kid who I can bang her a little bit, grab rebounds. I think he can grab a lot of boards in a conference like this. So you see Jerry McNamara, again, pulling some P5 cast-offs, little-known guys, role player types that are going to be really, really good for this program. And all 4 of the transfers they have so far, not all 4 are going to just smash, right? Like Wilmoth is probably going to grab rebounds, but I don't expect him to like blow up or anything. Peter Carey perhaps becomes a really vicious shot blocker and rebounder in this conference. Reed Duchemy is the one that I think could be a really big producer and somebody that will likely thrive under Jerry McNamara here. So Siena, that's a team to certainly pay attention to in the NAAC. All right. The CAA, the Colonial, this is a conference that always churns out like competitive tournament teams. Their conference tournament is always fun, and they got teams capable of pulling upsets consistently. The first thing I want to talk about is Hofstra and Speedy Claxton. Coach Speedy Claxton, he's done a really nice job. Hofstra has a hotbed of hoops in their backyard and a plethora of prospects to look at. And they do a nice job of getting those guys. Now, they are going to be losing their star, Tyler Thomas, who is out of eligibility, 22.5 points per game. Jocko Fritz, who, been around the collegiate game for a long time, he's gone as well. So they're losing some pieces. Darlinston Dubar, he transferred out, 17.8 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, over in a steal. He is a really important piece. Losing him hurts. Formerly of Iowa State, didn't play too well there. Goes to Hofstra for a few seasons, smashes it. Ends up like a guarantee St. John's transfer. Like that was where he was supposed to go, right? That didn't happen. St. John's has, I guess, been, kicking their feet there, and he ends up going to Tennessee. So he's headed to Tennessee. Miles Wilmoth, who we just talked about, he's headed to Siena. And they're losing 3 or 4 of their other pieces as well. Jaquan Carlos is headed to Syracuse. So some, pretty big parts of their team gone. What does Speedy Claxton do? Immediately goes into the portal and re-ups. They have 2, 4, 6 transfer names so far, and still 1 or 2 scholarships to work with. One piece that they just got today, Jaquan Sanders, Seton Hall transfer, somebody who really looks like he has massive upside. Seton Hall doesn't have a lot of NIL. Shaw Holloway is an amazing coach. Sanders obviously didn't like the pieces that they brought in. Looked like he was going to have opportunity, but just guess he didn't want to be there. So he heads to Hofstra, not too far away. Going to be a starter. Has a endless amount of shots in front of him. He's a 39% three-point shooter on limited volume. Now he's going to get volume. Look out for Jaquan Sanders. TJ Gadsden, a 10-point per game Canisius transfer. Michael Graham, who transfers in from Loyola Marymount, really solid rebounder. Cruz Davis, who was at Iona initially. Now he transfers in from St. John's. Didn't play a lot there. Didn't really make a lot of sense. I know he followed Coach Patino from Iona to St. John's, but he was never going to get minutes. He's going to get all the minutes he can handle at Hofstra. St. Francis transfer, Carlos Lopez, who's a 10-point per game scorer, right around a 32% three-point shooter, and Gene Araguan, who is an Iona transfer. So retooling the roster, the pieces to really know there, Jaquan Sanders and Cruz Davis, and they won't be done yet. Speedy Claxton is a great coach. Hofstra has a bright future ahead. All right, and the other team to talk about here is Charleston, our city, right? And no disrespect to Hampton, who also looks like they're going to have a great roster, but we can't talk about everyone today. We don't have enough time. Our city, who had a magnificent run into the tournament and really, looked like a team that could pull off an upset. In fact, I thought for sure that with Pat Kelsey and the boys that they would beat Alabama. That didn't happen. And then you know what? Alabama went to the Final Four. So how wrong were we? Very wrong. But Charleston, Pat Kelsey gets the gig at Louisville. Chris Mack, who used to coach for Louisville, been doing his thing at Field of 68 the last year or two. He gets the our city job. He will be coaching Charleston. One thing you got to know about Charleston is, yes, they're a mid-major. Yes, they're in the CAA, but they have money. They have a fan base and an alumni group that cares very deeply and is extremely passionate about the program. Because of that, they're able to hire a guy like Chris Mack. And because of that, they're able to go into the portal and get some good names. One player that I like a lot for them, Lazar Dukovic, who is a transfer from Xavier, can hit threes, versatile, decent enough rebounder. Like, there were times where we were using him as a near min price play, and he was paying off repeatedly. He was starting games for Xavier. Just wasn't a huge role for him there. He played about 15 to 16 minutes. He's going to come into Charleston and he's going to play a ton of minutes. The nice thing for Chris Mack is they lost guys to transfer, right? But Ante Brizovic, their center, he's back. 12.6 rebounds per game, about a half a block, 3 assists. He flirted with the portal, but he has decided to return and play for Chris Mack. And of course, they lose Rain Smith to Louisville, and Ben Burnham is also going up to the P5 level, along with 7 other players, little used guys, although Kobe Rogers, who was a very important piece at one point, but they have retooled quite well. Not only do they get Lazar, but they bring in 2 transfers from St. Louis, very little used sophomores, Steph Van Bussel and Georgie Kirkich. Delaware State transfer Daywilk Tavares. Tavares was actually a pretty highly sought after transfer by multiple programs, and some of them at the P5 level. But he's going to be going to Charleston to play for Chris Mack. He averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and shot nearly 37% from long range for Delaware State. Think he's going to be a factor for this Charleston team? Darren Boyd, who's a Lipscomb transfer, 44% three-point shooter, averaged 18 points per game. There's going to be their alpha. And AJ Smith, who transfers in from the Citadel, 35% three-point shooter, averaged 16 points per game. Chris Mack has a type. If you are a multi-position player and you can shoot threes, you'll have a spot on this Charleston roster. This Charleston team looks capable of winning the CAA in Chris Mack's first year. I know the last year or two of his Louisville tenure got a little wonky there. People kind of lost faith and he was saying weird things, but the year he had on the field of 68 as an analyst, really solid. I think Chris Mack's going to do very well for this Charleston team. They're absolutely loaded already. All right, let's go to the America East. Why would we talk about the America East? There's really only one team. When you think of the American East, there's one team to talk about, and that's Vermont. They're usually the team to win in their conference tournament. They're usually the team to get into the actual tournament itself, and they're usually a team that most people like to pick for an upset. Although it's been many years, the game against Syracuse where they were making crazy shots seems like so long ago now, and they've been very close in the last decade to pulling off some marquee upsets. It hasn't quite happened lately, but they have had teams on the ropes several times. Coach John Becker is a legend. What have they brought in? Let's first start with what they lose, because Vermont, they do a nice job of cycling in talent, and they usually keep that talent too. Matt Veretto, Aaron Deloney, and Brenton Mills, all 3 rotation players, are out of eligibility. And then little used players like Jackson Skipper and Charlie Moore are both transferring out. So Deloney, the main piece there, and Veretto, but they can overcome that. How do they choose to overcome that? They go out. Memphis, who is basically under Penny Hardaway, bringing in an entire new roster. Jalen Young only played 11 minutes for Memphis. He transfers into Vermont, where he's going to be electric. He's going to be so productive here. And then just today, about an hour before the show, Shai Odom, who was a highly rated recruit out of high school, had major offers from multiple P5s, decided to go to Howard. Injury-plagued season last year. His first season at Howard was tremendous. They were in the tournament. He produced extremely well. A healthy Shai Odom is a P5 player and possible NBA guy. Now he's going to Vermont, where he's going to be healthy, playing 30-plus minutes. Look out. Shamir Bogues is back. Their 11.5 rebound guard. TJ Long is back. 36% three-point shooter, 12-4. So this is a really nice roster that Vermont has. And the America East has, some decent coaches as well. And it's funny because as we get older, start seeing guys who you watched play, they're coaching now or their kids coming up. Phil Martelli Jr. is the coach at Bryant. They are going to be getting Earl Timberlake back, who, has decided to spend his last collegiate year at Bryant. Kudos to him. Of course, he was at Miami at one point. They do bring in the St. Bonaventure transfer, Barry Evans. So that's another team that's going to, produce pretty well. Bryant plays a style, regardless of who's coaching them, seemingly, and they have a big fan base that likes to, participate there. So those are the America East teams to look at. Now, going to the MAC Single A, we're going to talk about one team in particular, and that is not Ball State. That is Akron. Just looking at Ball State because there's a boomerang transfer. If you don't know what a boomerang transfer is, it's player transfers. Maybe they go up to the P5 level and then they transfer back. So Peyton Sparks, who was a pretty strong player at Ball State, transferred to Indiana, didn't get a lot of opportunities. Now he's going to finish up his career at Ball State. Boomerang transfer. So that's another term if you hear me say, now you know. All right, let's look at what Akron's done, because Akron has arguably, even more so than some of the P5 teams, they're going to have to replace a lot, the heart and soul of their team. And it's not going to be easy, but if anyone's up to the task, it's Coach Gross, John Gross. Losing Enrique Freeman, who's just a freak, absolute freak. I thought Akron might pull off that first round upset. He was so strong. Averaged 19 and 13. Ali is done. No more college eligibility. 15-point per game scorer. Greg Tribble, all out of eligibility. McCall Dawson, who is their other rotational piece, is transferring out. They have a lot to replace, and it won't be easy. But Gross has done some things, and he's gone to 3 different programs at the P5 level and brought some pieces in. First, West Virginia, who is completely retooling their roster. 2 players have decided to transfer to Akron from West Virginia. Seth Wilson, who was a min-price piece for DFS. We used him a few times. And Josiah Harris. Now, both were fine role players for West Virginia. Both played about 17 and 20 minutes per game. So these aren't total, guys who are at the end of the bench, walk-on types. These are rotational players that played, upper tier competition, and they played a solid role. Wilson shot 38% from 3. Harris about 32%. Harris averaged 5 and 4. Wilson 3 and 2. So again, their actual stats, raw stats, not too great, right? But they're going to a lower level conference where they're going to be able to compete, play a lot of minutes, and obviously they're going to be able to handle themselves quite well. North Carolina transfer, James Nkongwo. Didn't work out. North Carolina, when you're playing on a team with Armando Bacot, there's just not going to be a ton of minutes for you. It was kind of questionable for him to transfer there anyways. And he, ironically enough, was originally from West Virginia. So technically, Akron has 3 former West Virginia players on their roster now with James Okonkwo. And then Ohio State transfer Bowen Hardman, who played very little, but this is the type of kid who is going to explode. Like, this is a Jack Golke type. If Akron gets back into the tournament right away and, there's a player who's knocking down threes, it would be this kid, Bowen Hardman, who will be going into his junior year. Very few minutes throughout his first 2 seasons at the collegiate level. He did have a game against Wisconsin where he had to play 21 minutes. It was career high. Hit a couple threes, 7 points, 3 rebounds. He didn't shy away in that game, and he hasn't had a ton of volume, but he did shoot 45% from long range last year and 50% the year before that. But again, he's only taken 28 threes across those 2 seasons. But he's going to get that opportunity here with Akron to shoot. So, P5 cast-off, watch out for Akron. And they also bring in a Cornell transfer by the name of Isaiah Gray. So, I like what Akron's done there. This is another team that, to me, if you're talking about futures, they look like a team in the MAC that, probably won't have huge odds to win, but it's a team that I could see pulling it out, even with a renewed roster and John Gross, who has high major experience as well. All right, I want to move to the Southland here, and then we'll kind of wrap up. I'm not gonna do a long one like we normally do, but the Southland belongs to McNeese State, and more specifically, the American gangster Will Wade. Now, McNeese State let us down tremendously. What's up, Don? Hey, good to see you, buddy. My man, Don, good seeing you. That is a very loyal viewer and supporter of the Super Show. I appreciate it. It's good seeing you, man. Just hanging out, talking about the transfer portal, but I really do appreciate you checking us out. Hope you're doing your thing and still making some money betting on whatever you're doing until that college basketball and college football rolls back around. All right. McNeese State, they hurt my heart. They let me down tremendously because I honestly thought they were going to make a really big run through the tournament. Gonzaga, like their roster was kind of beat. Like to me, I was like, this McNeese State team is going to cause problems. Shahada Wells, phenomenal. How would Gonzaga ever deal with him? Kristen Shumate, he's solid. Dude's amazing rebounder. Get some guys on Gonzaga in foul trouble. What's going to happen? Tavian Collum and Javon Garcia, they're both sniper three-point shooters. DJ Richards, you got CJ Felder. This is not an easy win, but McNeese State's going to cover, and they're going to win this game outright. And what happened? Treachery. Gonzaga not only reminded me never to bet against them in the first round, but don't pick against them until the Sweet 16, ever. That is a rule that we had in place. I don't know why I didn't follow it last year, but I will be following it this year. Do not bet against Gonzaga. And I learned that the hard way. And Gonzaga is going to have a way better roster this season, by the way, but we're not going to talk about them today. Anyways, McNeese State got absolutely stuffed in a locker. They did a nice job. They held Shahada Wells to 1 of 8 shooting. It was a big disappointment. Then the coaching carousel starts. People are talking about Will Wade. Maybe he's going to get to Arkansas. Maybe he's going to get Kentucky. Maybe he's going to get Ohio State. All these different things. Now, I had heard an interview about a month before the tournament in which he said somebody had asked him if, coaching gigs at the P5 level, SEC come calling, will you be interested? And he had said something to the effect of, being interested, but that he was going to stay at McNeese, or he intended to stay at McNeese for at least another season, and kind of build something here. He's a rock star there. They gave him the opportunity after everything. It's kind of funny how it turns out, like he gets caught, making a strong ass offer and paying people. Now it's okay to do. Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman Trophy back on record. Whatever. If that's the worst the guy did, let's go. And obviously there are teams that were interested in him. But I'm glad that he's coming back to McNeese. And he did a really nice job his first season at McNeese, bringing in P5 cast-off talent. Shahada Wells, amazing. CJ Felder, adequate. Didn't quite live up to the expectations we had for him, but I don't think his career was a failure by any means. They have a lot of pieces they have to replace, though. Shahada Wells is out of eligibility. CJ Felder and Tavian Collum, all 3 of those guys, their main pieces, all gone. Now, they do have 5 players transferring, only 1 of which played above 12 minutes per game. So not a huge deal. They're looking for their own opportunities too. I get it. They will return Christian Shumate and Javon Garcia, both heavy rotational players from that tournament team. DJ Richards will be back. Mike Saunders will be back. So that's the foundational pieces. And then they go into the portal and they pull a Super Show favorite, Brandon Murray, formerly of LSU, Georgetown, Ole Miss. He's been around, right? He's been everywhere. Going to finish his career at McNeese State, where he's going to be able to recapture some of the early LSU form. His freshman season at LSU, we saw him. He took over some games. He was dominant. There were times where it's like, wow, this kid's going to be really, really good. Went to Georgetown. He was uber productive there. Usage and shot rates above 25%. And then, the wheels kind of fell off there at Ole Miss. Didn't really work out. I don't think he ever really was 100% healthy. Didn't fit into Chris Beard's system. He did raise his three-point shooting percentage to 36. He's going to have that opportunity at McNeese State. I think he is a guy that we can expect to slide into the Shahada Wells role. However, Sincere Parker is also transferring into McNeese State from St. Louis, and he is somebody that's a real problem. Obviously he leaves St. Louis because they get rid of Travis Ford. They do a coaching change. Sincere Parker is almost like came out of nowhere. Had some productivity in his sophomore season 2 years ago, but this past season he was ridiculous. 44%, 40% shot, or 44% from long range, 40% shot rate. Yeah, you heard me right. 40% shot rate, 32% usage rate, steal rate over 2%, a block rate over 4%, drew almost 5 fouls per 40, 81% free throw shooter. He was incredible. Unfortunately, he missed the A10 tournament due to injury, and the last couple weeks of February, he just bowed out because he wasn't healthy. But he had a couple of games. They got him into the starting lineup in like early February. He dropped 33 points on LaSalle on February 7th off the bench. Then he dropped 34 points off the bench against St. Joe's. They said, geez, we better start this kid. They start him. He scores 30 as a starter against VCU. 3 straight games over 30. That just shows you what kind of scorer this guy can be. Now, he missed all of December and most of November with injuries as well. Just couldn't get healthy. Started the first 4 games of the season for St. Louis. In those first 4 games, he scored 19 plus points in all but one of them. And one of those opponents was against Wyoming. So we're talking about a kid who also could be very similar to Shahada Wells, maybe more so than Brandon Murray, but that is a nice little two-headed monster at guard with your returner, Javon Garcia, who can run the point. There's going to be no lack of scoring for this McNeese State team. They also bring in a double-double guy in Joe Charles from Louisiana, the Ragin' Cajuns, as they were called. He had 11 points, 10 rebounds per game. They bring him in to play, the 4. They are going to be a little undersized. That is going to be the one thing that hurts this team. They may have to play Charles at center at sometimes. And they also bring in the Arizona State transfer, Bryant Cellabang, who is also a little undersized at 6'8", but can play some 5 here in the Southland. Now, he only played 16 minutes per game. You look at his average, 5 points, 4 rebounds, and you're going to say, wow, big deal. What's he going to do? You have to really go back to his time at Tulsa to get I think the clear picture. Sometimes players go to ASU under Bobby Hurley and they just die out. And I'm not trying to disrespect Bobby Hurley. I have a lot of admiration for Dan. I think he's one of the best coaches there is right now. Bill Self still the best of current coaches, active coaches, I should say. But Danny Hurley is amazing. Bobby Hurley, not so much. So I don't like the way that he benched Cellabang, did not play him, and it really didn't make any sense. Now, this will be his final collegiate season. He played a couple of years at the JUCO level where he was dominant. For Tulsa, he started all 30 games. This was 2 years ago. Played about 32 minutes per game. Averaged 12 points, 9.5 rebounds, almost a block per game. And he shot 62% from the field. So you mean to tell me this is a guy that shouldn't have been playing 20 minutes at least? He played 15.9 at ASU, 4.8 points, 4.1 rebounds, shot about 57% from the field. He doesn't shoot threes, whatever, but he can bang down low, especially in a conference like the Southland. Do not overlook this McNeese State team. I think we'll probably get pretty horrible odds for them to win the Southland, but it just feels like such a free, like wherever book you can find it, and I'll pay attention to, like McNeese State, you need to bet them. This group that they brought in the portal is so elite. Like this team can beat some hack job P5 teams, and if they get back to the tournament, which I believe they will not fizzle out like they did in this game against Gonzaga. They will be far more prepared. Will Wade, this will be a probably like a his final run with them. Maybe one more season. We'll see what kind of jobs open up next season. But I think this McNeese State team, way early in the season, we don't know where they'll land. We don't even know what opponent they'd have, what seed they'd be. But this is a team capable of winning a tournament game or two. And I said that about the last McNeese State team, so take that with a grain of salt. But I'm very high on this group, led by Sincere Parker, Brandon Murray, and Brian Celabang. All right. So that is the mid-major portal shenanigans that are happening, really just harping on the fact that, hey, the mid-major, low-major level, they can build a strong roster as well. They're not going to go out there at the end of the day and win a title. Let's not get crazy. The Final Four is, George Mason said it could be done. You could still see these teams making those deep runs, and it's still going to happen. I don't think that's dead yet. If certain people get their way about making these super leagues and keeping mid-majors out, then that could be dead. But as it stands right now, anybody can beat anybody, and these in a tournament, one-game season setting, these type of rosters are capable of beating anyone. So I really like that McNeese State team. So we'll see what we got for futures on them. McNeese State to win the Southland, Charleston to win the CAA, if not Hofstra. I think Hofstra will be the favorites. Grand Canyon to win the WAC, and High Point to win the Big South. Those are a few that we'll be looking to get some money down on as it becomes available throughout the summer. All right, just real quick, let's just pull this up. So next week we're going to do some more, obviously, transfer talk. We'll go over the some of the top end guys that have declared for the draft, some who are going to come back, any of those rumors, and kind of just the overall construction of teams. Like North Carolina needing a center, Indiana still technically needing a shooter, Kentucky filling out their bench. So there's going to be a lot of roster construction talk next week. With Kentucky, we saw Kerr Kriisa, Kobe Brea. They landed both of those guys today. Great on them. Xavier Amos, he decided to go to Wisconsin instead of Virginia from NIU. Jonas Idu just went to Arkansas, not Baylor. But there's a lot of really quality pieces in the portal. Plenty of roster moves still to go. Great Osabor is out there, has visits with Louisville, Texas Tech, and America's team, the Washington Huskies. Davon Smith is apparently considering the Washington Huskies. So lots of excitement going on here throughout both the college basketball landscape and college football. Stay with me a few more weeks as we break down the portal in further detail. And then we get ready for our off-season extravaganza, previewing every conference in college football with myself and my co-pilot, Jake Kuchek. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for always supporting the Super Show in the regular season, in the tournament, and now in the off-season. You guys are amazing. Appreciate that continued support. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place on the Super Show, presented by the FTN Network. Take care, guys.